So yeah, we kind of just wanted to talk about your debut album, which is coming out in March. Do you have a specific date for that yet?
Yeah, March 19th.
March 19th. Awesome. So almost a little over a month.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So it's been like over 2 years in the works. Can you kind of just talk about that whole process and like what it means to be like this close to releasing it and like sharing it with everyone?
Yeah, for sure. So it started with this trip that I made to Big Bear, which is something that I do occasionally to get outside of my normal working space. I'll rent like a little cabin at Big Bear. So I went up there, I took my dogs, and for like a week or 10 days straight, I would just put myself on the schedule where I would only spend 2 hours on an idea. I try to write a melody, I try to write some chords, and then I would just move on to the next one. And so by the end of 7 or 10 days, I had like 30 some ideas. And then I went back and decided which ones I thought were the strongest and worth pursuing. I could sort of see the vision for. And the plan was to finish them and make an album. But I toured so much that it was like almost impossible to dive into these songs, which were also not obvious singles, all of them. The album is sort of a conceptual thing. So when I'm on the road and I only have a week back from shows, it feels almost irresponsible to do something that experimental as opposed to something that is more clearly going to be a single that I could finish, with the week that I have at home. So I just didn't really find the time to experiment and dive into the album. But then COVID happened, and then it was just like a free for all with like all the time in the world that I wanted to experiment, and it made the album possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So actually like my next question was about releasing your album during COVID and like talking about like any silver linings. So that's obviously like a huge one, just having the amount of time to really dive into your work.
Yeah.
Um, would you say that COVID like changed at all your process for your music?
Um, it made me feel a lot more guilt-free about just experimenting and pursuing an idea that might not work. And if I look back and I spent a few days or even a week on something that didn't work, it would be okay because there's more time, and I was experimenting. So there's value in that also, figuring out things that work, things that don't work. And then also my personal life, just being outside more. Ironically, I just been spending a lot more time outside because I just appreciate whatever little time I can get outside. So I started going to the park every Saturday. I like corral my friends and we play this game that we made up. That's like, we all have paddles. It's sort of like tennis. There's a net and it's really fun. It's like paddle. It's like ping pong, but like big with a tennis net.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. It's been good to have more time to explore different activities and dive into interests more as well. I'm curious about the vision behind your album. Like you talked a lot about being able to really dive into that and experiment with things. So what kind of is the vision behind that? Like what's the story you're trying to tell?
Sure. So with the last EP that I did, The Line Across the Field, I had written this children's story and I modeled the whole album around that. And then for this one, there's not as explicit of a story, but it more or less revolves around this kid who goes on an adventure and starts out in a carnival with this crazy host that brings him into the carnival. And from there, he winds up in the jungle. And it's I guess for me, it's exciting to go to a different world in each song. And I think it still has me in it. But in each case, I'm sort of trying to, well, first I get inspired by whatever that world is, whether it feels like the Old West or it feels like Latin South America. And then I try to build something that is weird and not what you've heard, but fits into that world. Another thing that you find in the album is that a lot of stuff changes radically, like in the middle of a song. that was that was really fun for me. It was always something that I like to do in songs, to have these sort of switch ups. But again, with singles, you're always a little bit scared of that. Like, if this thing has streaming potential, you don't want to jeopardize that. But with the album, I just said to hell with it. And I made songs that in some cases are like very chill and peaceful at first, and then get sort of aggressive and violent, or just do like a, yeah, there's one song in particular I'm thinking of that is like a little bit of like an Old West theme, which I've been really into. And it's got this intense, aggressive drop at first, and then it builds at the end. You think it's going to go back into something like that, but it's the time sort of goes in half and it clears out. And to me, I picture just like the standoff in an old Western movie, and it's just real badass. And there's just one bass going, boom, 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 boom. And it's a mix of like Western and Indian. So on top of it, you have this bouzouki, which is like it's like a Middle Eastern guitar playing a melody. And then everything comes in, and it feels like sort of like Aladdin, like you're in a crazy big bazaar or something, and everybody's clanging on things. And I even went in there and did a bunch of vocals that like doom cha cha doom cha cha. It just gets really cool, weird. And there's like the string section at the end of it. I spent like a week on for like something in the last 10 seconds or 15. So it's like very, very rabbit hole-y kind of just like a frivolous amount of time spent on the smallest things. But I'm really proud of it. I just think it's amazing.
That's awesome. And yeah, I love the idea of like each song transporting the listener, sorry, into a different world. And I think that that's particularly like relevant right now when we can't really travel and like explore much of the world. So like being able to do that through music is like a really cool thing.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious if you've had a chance to play any of the songs, like the unreleased songs for live streams. Like I know sometimes before an album comes out, an artist will play an unreleased song at a show to kind of just like to build up the hype. And obviously like you haven't had the chance to do that. So I'm curious, like, first of all, if you've been able to play any of the new songs in live streams, and then how is it different to like release an album without having like the live audience feedback?
So both are good questions. I did get to play a couple of the songs. I think I did like an EDC live stream, and I got to play a couple of them. And that was cool. I mean, it's always good to see what reacts with people, because you just don't know. I mean, you might think a song is going to be liked by everybody, and then they just like some other song, or they don't like any of your songs. It's another option. In this case, I was able to see that people really like the song Around the World, which was cool. Around the World to me wasn't like an obvious, I won't call it a hit, but like wouldn't obviously be the most popular with my fans, but it was one that I loved a lot. And that really resonated with them. So it's cool to get that feedback. I mean, anybody who makes music, when somebody tells you they like something, it's like it has incredible influence on the way you hear it and on what you want to keep working on. So I think that applies to pretty much any artist. Once people bob in their head and they like it, it sounds better to you. And then so I got excited about that one. And we decided to make that the next single after The World We Left Behind. And there's a lot of the album that I haven't played, but I did do a special little private listen with a few of my fans on Twitter that I've seen at shows that run certain fan club sort of things. Like there's a Kashmir India, there's a Team Kashmir, there's Kashmir Argentina, things like that. And I did a small little private listening through the album with those guys, and I got to catch up with what's going on in their life. And there's just like really cute young Indian dudes that are, just going to school and stuff. So we got to talk about that and play them the album and hear what their favorites were. And the next part of your question was, is it weird, right?
Yeah, like just what are the differences between like getting the audience feedback, playing a live show versus, online? And like, how is that?
It's a huge difference. I mean, it's like night and day. It's like I'm DJing to, my friend Anthony, who's holding the camera, and I got like my dog meandering around in the back, and I'm trying to act like I'm at a big rave, and all the moves, the DJ moves, they all feel a little bit goofy when it's just a bunch of, flat-faced friends, no expression, just staring at you. You feel like it all feels kind of silly, to be honest.
How have you mentioned, keeping in touch with your fans via like private listening parties with like, some of the people that you've kept in touch with. Is that something that you were doing before COVID as well, or is that kind of a newer development?
No, that was a new thing, and also I was really excited about the album, and I was a little bummed that it was the release date was as far away as it was. So I really wanted to share it with people, and it was a little bit selfish, I guess, in that way. But of course, I think they liked it too. But it was for me, I guess. It was weird to make all this music and just be sitting on it. I really felt like I wanted to play it for somebody, and of course I play it for my friends, but they can only hear it so many times. They're fucking sick of it. Yeah, that was really fun. Just it was just a spur of the moment idea. It was not something we've done before.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that that's like something that I feel like several artists that I've heard of have been doing things like that, which I think is like a really special way to interact with fans. So that's very cool.
Yeah. I thought I was original.
No, I think that it is like an original thing and definitely something that's growing. I haven't heard of doing a listening party that way, but I've definitely heard of, especially like Discord chats.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing as well. But I think the listening party too is like a really cool idea, especially like doing that virtually.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about like your musical development. So your current sound is quite a bit different from like the beginnings of your career with the Cataracts, sorry. I was just wondering if you could like talk me through like your musical development and like also any elements of your sound that you've like carried forward from those early days.
Sure. So when I got started, I was into hip hop, and I started a group with my friend David, and we were called the Cataracts in high school. And we weren't super popular in high school, but we graduated, kept making music, and then gained some popularity in the Bay Area. We started working with this girl named Dev, who I found who lived a few towns over. And we started making more songs together. Some of the songs got played on the radio, and they were, sort of like Bay Area guys trying to do an electro sort of thing, singing on some stuff. Some of it was rapping. So it was like pop, electro, hip hop, which sounds super cliche now, but at the time it was a novel idea. And we were doing well in the Bay. We decided to move down to LA, and we suddenly became like really small fish in a big pond. And I was working with whoever wanted to work with me. So my managers would send in different artists, and I would produce for them. And one of those artists was the Far East Movement. And we took this hook that we had done on a different Dev song. We put on this, we whipped the beat up real quick. The song took all of like, an hour or so to put down. And then nobody expected it, but it went number one in so many countries, and it was number one here for a long time, or 3 weeks. And that really catapulted us to this sort of like pop producer status. And it was a weird fit, honestly, because I was just sort of a hip hop producer who had a bit of a fluke, I think, with G6. So a lot of the sessions didn't amount to much. I didn't really have the arsenal to get into a pop session and do what was required of big guys like Jason Derulo and Justin Bieber. And I had these cool little hip hop beats, but it wasn't the best fit until I found Enrique Iglesias, and me and him really clicked. And so I ended up producing most of the last album that he did, or all the English songs that were on the album. And that was a good relationship. That was one of my really good experiences in pop music. But aside from that, I felt like I would look at my peers, my friends. I mean, he's way out of the stratosphere now, but Benny Blanco, and we were friends, and I would watch how he would work with people doing pop sessions. And I felt like Benny was perfect for it. Benny had this way of, creating a vibe, and it was fun, and he would not overcomplicate things, and he had a nice, simple approach, and it worked really great for pop music, and he had a great ear. And for me, I just felt like it didn't come as naturally. I felt like where I really excelled was being by myself and spending a lot of time crafting things. And that sort of led me to dance music, because that's kind of what dance music is. And I didn't want to transition too arrogantly into dance music. I saw guys like will.i.am doing it, and I felt that they just didn't do it in an authentic way. It was a little corny to me. So I started out doing ghost producing, and I was basically making dance tracks for guys who were already DJing, but they didn't know how to produce. And a couple of those songs got really big, and that to me was sort of a symbol that I could do it. It was a sign that I could do it. And I decided to start KSHMR, and I went with Spinnin', because the guy I was ghost producing for was also through Spinnin'. So they're like, oh, you're the guy actually making songs. Why not have you on board? And I pitched them this whole vision of KSHMR and what it meant and how cinematic it was going to be. And I didn't really have the skill set yet to actualize that dream. I was pretty not great at dance music production, but I slowly got better. And then as I got better, it became possible to really fulfill the promise that I made to do this big cinematic sound, and of course the Indian sounds, which have become a big part of my brand, I guess, of my artistry.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious about like if there are any lessons that you learned in your early career that you've like carried with you into like the present moment. Like obviously a huge thing releasing your first album. So anything like that?
Anything that like I learned along the way, or like a big
lesson?
Well, for sure, one big lesson is that if you want to do something that's incredibly difficult, like being an artist and making it as an artist, you've really got to drop everything else and just focus on that. And, for me, that was like the ghost producing thing, or just producing for other people in general. It was a leap of faith to especially walk away from pop music, where I was making decent money, to make this bet on myself. But you can't, I think it's almost arrogant to expect that you could do something that's so difficult and have something else going on at the same time, because there's so many other people that are trying so hard to get the same thing that you want, that if you're not devoting all your time for it, I just don't think it would work. So there's that. And then I guess a big lesson for me going into dance music was I had a real benefit of seeing it from the outside looking in, and not being too attached to anything about dance music, and just seeing what it was missing in my mind. And at the time, in the beginning, that was like something darker and cinematic, because you had all these Dutch DJs with the same haircut, peace, love, unity, respect. And I was like, wow, there's such a big opportunity here to just do something like kind of dark and menacing. And at first, that was the thing I was going with. That was exciting to me. And I was able to, I think, make a good mark with that. And then also to take my heritage and put that into it. And I think a lesson that I've always taken from that is that a genius, or quote unquote genius, an idea that can really work for you anyway, is one that is often not a completely novel idea at all. It's just taking two things that people haven't put together before. And for me, that was Indian sounds and dance music. And just by connecting two familiar things in an unfamiliar way, that can get you very far. And that can almost be genius in itself, I think.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's very cool. So you might have touched on this a little bit already, but as far as like elements of your sound that you've carried forward through your career, is there anything? Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, like elements that have sort of survived from the beginning till now.
Yeah, anything, or was it a kind of a shift, a really big shift creatively?
Um, I would say that I just my personality, I have crazy tunnel vision. So I really love getting into the little details and little ear candy things. That's always been a part of my sound, I guess. And I think it became most appreciated when I went into dance music, because dance music is almost just like an exhibition of what you can do with sound, whereas pop music is like, okay, cool, you got the music in the back, but it's more about the singer. So I think that has stuck with me. And also, my love for hip hop has always been there. But especially, well, up until now, really, I haven't done anything with hip hop with Kashmir. So this album is the first time that there's just a lot more for me in that tempo. I guess in some ways, the album is like, if I was one thing in the beginning and then I totally 180'd with Kashmir, then this album is sort of like meeting in the middle, I suppose.
Very cool. That kind of ties into my next question because I was wondering if, the album being a chance to really dive into your process and several ideas and experiment a bit, whether that represented like a turning point in your sound. But it sounds like it's really just like a meshing of everything and who you are creatively.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, whereas earlier with Kashmir, I might have said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. That's not like a dancer Kashmir thing to do. This time I was just more whatever, you know? Yeah, just I know that wasn't very articulate. I was just like I felt like I've been doing the cashmere thing and been so, I guess, loyal to it, and it's what it meant to me and what I would do and what I wouldn't do. And if you ever been in that situation, it gets exhausting, and eventually you almost want to do the opposite just for the fuck of it. So yeah, it's still to me feels like cashmere, but it's just mostly, I guess, it's in the tempos, and there's really nothing like there's no EDM bangers in it.
Yeah, definitely. I listened to the first single and I really, really enjoyed it. It's like a very hopeful, upbeat. But also it's really like whimsical and dreamy as well.
Cool. I
Um,
like that.
yeah, so it definitely like I feel like you were talking about earlier, like it transports you, like definitely felt that. It's sort of like this sort of dreamlike sort of sound is what I felt. And I was like, oh, it's like a little different, for sure, which I really liked. So I was just wondering if it was kind of, taking things in a new direction.
Yeah, I think so. Like I guess story has always been at the core of the Kashmir project. And in the beginning, it was maybe about like epic blockbuster sort of stories, and this is more like a kid's hopeful dreaming sort of story, which where I'm at mentally is more fitting.
Very cool. That's super interesting. Well, those are all the questions that I had. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to mention or think would be good to include.
Um, I don't know. I have no bullet points or anything.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Yeah. I think that is it then. But I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's
Yeah.
been great to talk with you.
Yeah, you too. You asked really great questions. So thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you.